Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. Urbex Jerks, submitted by Brian D. A couple of years back, my friends and I decided to do a little urban exploring in a town about an hour away from us. You may have heard of it. It's called Centralia, Pennsylvania. A while back, a fire started, and no one really knows how it happened, but it happened in the mine underground that basically runs under the entire town. The fire is still burning, and it's a very dangerous place to go, and I will tell you that we did see law enforcement out there. It was a completely abandoned town. All the buildings were still standing, but completely derelict. There were businesses as well as homes. The entire town basically just up and moved. Some people, I guess, stayed for as long as they could, but as far as I know, even they're gone now. Some of the roads are all busted up due to the fire and the way that the ground shifts. It's really a sight to see. You can find pictures of it if you Google it right now. Anyway, we decided to see if we could sneak around a little bit towards dusk, hoping there wouldn't be any local police to chase us out. We even parked a ways up the main drag and walked down so as to not arouse any suspicion. When we got into town, we spent a lot of time taking pictures of everything that we could while dodging anyone we thought might yell at us and tell us to leave. We got to an empty home with an open back door, and were shocked to see another group of people already in the house. They were out doing the same thing we were, just the Urban X stuff. There were 3 of us and 4 of them, all males on our side, and 3 guys and 1 girl on theirs. We all exchanged names and talked about why we were there and other places that we had checked out. They seemed really cool, and we decided to explore the house together. My friend Andy and I decided to start looking at things in the basement. Most of the things of the family who lived there were gone, but there were still odds and ends here and there. Some pretty creepy stuff that you can see in the pictures on the internet. Old stuffed animals, toys, just a general mess. When we went down the rickety stairs to the basement, we noticed that it was hotter down there. I'm going to stop here and say I do not suggest anyone go to Centralia, nor do I endorse what we were doing. It's not the safest of things to do, especially with the levels of carbon monoxide and other stuff in the air. We were just being dumb and decided to go down anyway. After a few minutes, our other friend Scott came down with us, and we were just going through some old tools and taking pictures of the mess in the basement. We heard the other people walking around upstairs and talking, and thought we should go up there because it was pretty sketchy in the basement, and there wasn't really much to see anyway. When we all turned around to head back to the staircase, we heard the door at the top of the stairs close. Then we heard footsteps moving quickly out of the kitchen area where the door to the basement was. We went up the stairs and found that the door was locked. It was hung towards us, and we couldn't get it to budge. All 3 of us took turns trying to do it, and yelling to the other people to open the fucking door. We were met with silence. We had nothing but our flashlights, and anger took over pretty quickly. We did our best to try to kick out the door, but that didn't do anything. It didn't work at all. We kept yelling for the others, but soon realized they were no longer in the house. Why the hell they closed the door on us is a mystery that remains to this day. Not only was that not cool, it was unbelievably dangerous, and had we not found a basement window that had been covered, we would have been stuck down there. We were unbelievably mad after trying to open the door, and when Scott went back downstairs and discovered the window, he yelled for us. We all got down there, stacked up some boxes to get to the window, which opened freely. It didn't take long for all 3 of us to scramble out of the window into the whatever kind of fresh air is out there, and we looked around to see where those other people had gone. There was no sign of them. We were really pissed at this point and determined to walk around and try to find them. We figured it would be a fair fight with 3 guys on 3 guys. But after about 45 minutes of wandering around, we couldn't find them and decided we should probably just get the hell out of there. Wackos that would do something like that to strangers probably were capable of doing a lot more once it got dark. We kept taking pictures on our way out of town, and it was getting darker quicker. When we were within eyeshot of our car, I saw 2 people standing near it and immediately pointed it out to my friends. It was clear whoever it was trying to get in, so we broke into a run to catch them. As we got closer, we noticed that 2 of the guys were 2 of the same that were in the house with us, and I yelled something like, "Get the fuck away from my car!" And that's when they made a run for it into the brush on the side of the road. When we got to my car, I was ready to go find the guys and lay down some ass whooping. But my friends called me out and told me we really just needed to get in the car and get the heck on the road. So that's what we did. We just got out of there until we realized we were driving the wrong way. I did a U-turn and went back the way we had come, and as we were going through the main intersection of town, I looked up the cross street and saw all 4 of them standing on the side of the road. Without asking my friends, I turned the car straight at them and hit the gas. I remember hearing the girl scream and the guys yell as I barreled down onto them, swerving at just the last minute. They all fell backwards as I started to turn around for another pass, with my friends screaming at me to cut it out. But I will be honest, they were laughing at the same time. As I made another pass, all 4 of them ran behind some buildings, and I just kept going. I figured, hey, they gave us a scare, I gave them a scare. Now it was even, and time to go home. And again, I don't suggest anyone going out there or going into any of the buildings. We were really stupid for doing what we did, and not just because of those people. You can get seriously hurt out there. There's sinkholes, and again, the fire is still burning. You can see the smoke coming up from the ground in a lot of places. If you do go, I suggest staying above ground and taking pictures of that smoke. If any of those people hear this, you're a bunch of assholes, and part of me wishes I had clipped 1 or 2 of you with my car just to get even. But I didn't, and you should feel lucky you got away with nothing. People like that give urban exploration a bad name. Hey, whoever you are, go fuck yourselves. Turn of events, submitted by Tyler. When I was growing up, we had this really cranky old man for a neighbor. The kind of guy who yelled at kids and everybody else if you so much as put a foot on his front lawn walking by. He was mean as a snake, to everybody, including my parents and anyone else in the neighborhood. If we were playing in our yard or street hockey, and he happened to be coming by in his car, he would lay on the horn super loud, even a couple of houses past where we were playing. It's not like he was letting us know he was coming for safety. He was just being a jerk, and we always saw him coming anyway. He was constantly complaining to the town and calling the police on everything and anything anyone did in the neighborhood. He would even complain about people's Christmas lights, people trick-or-treating on Halloween, and God forbid you try to cut the grass when he didn't think you should. He was just all around mean, a mean old man. One day I was home alone. My parents and sisters were out doing something that I didn't feel like doing. I don't remember exactly, it doesn't matter. It could have been any number of a dozen things I wanted nothing to do with as a young male. I saw it as a chance to play video games and chill out with the house to myself. My dog was with me in my bedroom as I was playing away, and I thought I heard a noise downstairs, so I went to check it out, seeing if my parents and sisters came home. But no one was there. I went back upstairs after grabbing a soda and kept playing, and then heard something else. I did hear somebody walking around downstairs. That's when I started to get nervous. I texted my dad, and he said that they were still out, and I told him I thought someone was in the house. He said it was probably just my imagination. That's when I heard a crash in my kitchen and the sound of someone scrambling about. I heard someone messing with my back door and another struggle as I walked down there, and a voice yelled out, "Stop! Get on the ground!" The voice sounded familiar. I ran downstairs with my phone ready to call 911 and looked out into my back deck. My dog was right by my side, and what I saw surprised me. The old man from next door was standing on my back deck with a shotgun in his hand, and a really scraggly-looking guy lying face down on the deck. I called 911 immediately before opening the back door, and I told the police what was going on. They said they would send someone right over and to stay on the line. I told them about the guy next door holding a really creepy-looking guy at gunpoint, and they said stay inside. Of course, what did I do? I opened the door, and the old man told me to call 911. I told him that I had, and he was out there with his shotgun. He gruffly said thanks, and kept watching over the guy who once in a while would try to get up, and the old man would yell out, "Get back down!" The police arrived, and I told them to come around the side of the house over the phone, and the dispatcher relayed the information. They did, and yelled to my neighbor to put the gun down and back up, and immediately came over and handcuffed the creepy guy. Upon questioning, the old man said that he was out in his yard and saw this guy crawling through our dog door. I mean, he was a pretty big guy, and I can't believe he got through the dog door. Once he got inside, he'd been rummaging around in the house while I was upstairs, unbeknownst to me. He had grabbed a couple of things that were in his pockets. While he was walking around, he knocked over a crystal dish in my kitchen and then scrambled back out through the dog door. Why he didn't just open it, I'll never know. But it didn't matter. He ran right into the waiting shotgun of my cranky old neighbor. The police hauled the guy off and thanked the old man. Then they told me to call my parents and tell them to come home immediately. I did, and when they got there, the police continued to talk to my parents while I was still shaking. The old man actually cracked a smile about how scared I was. Before the police told him he could go home, he looked at me and told me to be more alert when I was home by myself. He actually patted me on the shoulder, something I never thought he would do in a million years. It was amazing that for all that jerky stuff he did in the neighborhood, he turned out to be a really good guy when it mattered most. Sadly, he passed away 7 months after this happened. Over that time, we learned he was a Vietnam vet who was struggling with PTSD, and that's why he really was the way he was. Looking back, I thank my lucky stars that he was paying attention to our house, when he was, and for helping me stop this creepy guy. Not like I had anything to do with it. It goes to show that you never know what the chapters of a book hold until you actually read it. I didn't stay home alone for a long time after that, but I did forge a relationship with the old man for the last few days of his life. I'll never forget him saving me and showing me that he really was a nice guy despite his behavior in the neighborhood. Somehow that moment of goodness and kindness changed him. He never called the cops or complained about anything again before he passed. Wherever he is, I can't thank him enough for watching out for me. The Night Bus Stalker by Kate. This happened around the summer of 2022 after I met up with 2 performer friends to rehearse for an upcoming show. I was catching the night bus to get back to the subway station where my car was, as I took the train while it was still operating. I was already uneasy, as I am a femme-presenting individual. I was born a female. I had no money to get a taxi or Lyft at the time. The bus finally came around, so I got on, paid the $2 bus fare, and sat down. The rest of the ride was pretty uneventful, as everyone was keeping to themselves. Pretty soon the bus began to empty out as people got off at their stations, where it was me and this one man who was giving me some weird vibe. I caught him looking at me a few times out of nowhere during the bus ride, but now he was asleep. I prayed that he would not get off at the same time as me, but unfortunately, that's exactly what happened once we finally got to my stop. When I began walking towards my car, I looked behind me to find the man following me. He was keeping a bit of distance from me, but I was still paranoid that he was 100% following me. I began to pick up the pace, getting my keys out while also clutching onto a pocket knife my roommate gave to me for protection. As soon as I reached my car, I jumped right in and immediately locked the doors. The man at this point caught up to me and walked over to the passenger side of my car. Fortunately, I had already locked it so he couldn't get in. Not even bothering to put my seatbelt on, I started my engine and drove out of the parking lot quickly. Once I felt safe enough, I put my seatbelt on and flagged down a member of security for the transportation system. I saw that the man who stalked me was still at the station, so I pointed him out and explained what happened. The security officer looked a bit annoyed, but it wasn't annoyance with me. It was an annoyance like, I can't believe this happened again. He told me he'd take it from there, and I thanked him before driving back to my apartment. A few days later, I bought pepper spray, and ever since that evening I have never left my apartment without it. I keep it out and ready to be used, and fortunately I haven't had a repeat of being stalked in my car. It scares me to think, though, What would have happened if I didn't lock my doors on time? What would have the stranger done to me? Would he have pulled out a weapon or tried to take advantage of me? This is unfortunately an everyday reality for us femme-presenting individuals. A Very Bad Situation, submitted by Tenuous Todd. Todd isn't my real name, and none of the names used in this are real for the same reason. Everyone wants to be someone anonymous on the internet. I grew up in a small town in Tennessee in the mid-2000s. Decent family, no crazy problems. My parents busted their humps to provide for me and my sister. Both of us were star athletes in high school, and both of us ended up going to college on full rides. I played basketball, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Like I said, growing up was good. Despite my parents working all the time, they made it their business to make sure me and my sis got good grades, were really involved in school activities, and at least one of them always came to our games. I did play football and baseball, but junior year gave them up to focus on hoop. Most of my friends were also on the sports teams, but two of my buddies from early on were not. They really weren't into anything other than video games, but we always got along, and I hung out with them a lot still. In high school, they started smoking a lot of weed and would come to my games and act crazy, getting the crowds fired up before usually getting kicked out. Funny guys for sure. They soon became the connection for the town when it came to pot, and when I went to college, they did graduate, and they moved in together. They also worked at a service station, but that was more of a front for their selling. By my sophomore year, they had bought the station and invested heavily in it, and made it a good business for a couple of 20-year-olds. I saw them on breaks and in the summer. It was the same old thing, just goofing around. I stuck with beers, but they were all-out partiers. Chris had bought a house with a giant yard and a pool, and Rick moved in with him. I never thought where they were getting all the money, but I did find out later. When I was in college playing, again, I'm not sharing what school I went to, they would call all the time asking about my teammates and stuff like that. I kind of figured out what they were looking for and realized that they were not only dealing, but they were also running a pretty big book back home. Over time, they had made a lot of connections in the sports world, and the service station now became not just a front for their drugs, but for their gambling. My senior year, I was getting a sniff at some pro options. I realized even my little time hanging out with them was a bad idea for my image, as the scouts were on top of everything. Seriously, it was like the FBI or something. It was a good thing. That winter their empire came to an end. They got raided by locals and feds, and it broke up their operation. I don't know all the ins and outs of what happened, but they gave up a lot of people to save their own butts. They had always been looked at as good guys, even though everyone knew what they were doing. But they always gave back to the community and were on boards and everything. People looked the other way, saying it was just weed and some sports betting. I ended up taking a deal to play in Europe with hopes of making some waves to go pro in the States, and I learned a lot. Mostly that I was not going to be an NBA star. But I did get involved in some legitimate businesses and an offer to bring one of them back to the States. I did, and it was a reversal of fortune of sorts. However, both Chris and Rick started hitting me up for money, or asking for it in exchange for drugs, which I was not into. They were now living in a trailer on some rented land and really going downhill. I helped them out a little, and I mean little, and it was all handled through the mail with signed receipts. Personal loans for friends. My business took off, and I had opened up an office in Chattanooga, not far from where I grew up, and it started thriving. I met a woman, got married, and things were just rolling along in my life. I went home to visit my parents and sister, and my dad asked me about Chris and Rick. I really hadn't seen them or spoke to them in a few months, and they hadn't hit me up for cash in quite some time. It was Christmas time, and Chelsea and I were going to stay with my parents for the holidays. She was from Portugal. She and my mom went out shopping, and my dad was going to my uncle's cabin to hunt. I used to hunt, but was not down with it for whatever reason that day. That afternoon, I went to a local watering hole after doing some shopping of my own. It's a little town, but we do have some cool mom and pop shops with unique gifts. but this is where my story gets bad. Sorry for the backstory, but I wanted everyone to know a little bit about my friends and how they stayed in my life. So I went into the place around 4 o'clock for a beer and a sandwich and to shoot the shit with all the old-timers who were all into basketball. They all remembered me in my high school and college days and were asking about my dad, just the usual small-town stuff. A little while later, in comes, you guessed it, Chris and Rick. They looked awful. Skinny as hell, gray skin that seemed to be hanging on their bones, and they were wearing dirty clothes and smelled like hell. Of course, they saw me and started yelling and going crazy. They ordered drinks, and I could tell the old-timers were not too thrilled. Chris and Rick were already messed up on something, and they were talking so fast I could barely keep up with them as the afternoon turned into evening. At one point, they both went to the bathroom and came out much quieter. They kind of stopped talking and just either stared at the TV or looked at one another. I had stopped at 2 beers and was ready to go home when Chris asked me if I could give them a ride. He also said he had something he'd been wanting to give me, a gift from his bookie days. He said he had a signed Rick Nash jersey, my favorite player. I knew they likely had no ride home, and said I don't need the jersey, but I will take you home. We all got into my Volvo, and right away I thought it was weird that they both got in the back seat. Normally guys fight over shotgun, but they just drunkenly got in and didn't say a word other than where the trailer was. Chris gave directions, slurring his words, and I really didn't want to be there all of a sudden. They both went silent again, and we pulled down a dirt road to their trailer. I parked and said, "Here you go, guys. Happy holidays," thinking I could get out of going inside. But Chris insisted that he get this jersey. Like an idiot, I followed him inside while Rick went over to a shed a little ways away from the trailer. The place was a dump and smelled worse than them. The entire thing was filled with empty beer and liquor bottles, dishes, crap all over the place. It was like that Hoarders show. Just super gross. Chris said the jersey was in his room, and he made his way through the filth and disappeared. I stood there for a few minutes wanting to leave but not be a dick, and that's when I noticed I didn't hear him rummaging around anymore. Things had gotten quiet. That's when I got the feeling I should get the hell out of there right away. I turned and went out the front door, and as I stepped down from the trailer, I heard a noise from the shed, and out stumbled Rick. He had a flashlight and something else in his hand that I couldn't see. A bunch of smoke came out from the door, and he stepped over to me, and I could smell something burning or scorching him. It was just really bad. It reeked. "Sure is good to see you home," he said, and laughed this crazy laugh. I just said, "Well, yeah, but I gotta get going." And he said, "Nah, I think you need to stick around a little while." And he held up this glass pipe thing. "Go on, hit it, man." I had never seen meth before, let alone smoked it, and I just said, "Nah, no thanks, brother." That's when Chris's voice came from behind me and said, "That's not nice, turning down our hospitality." I turned, and he was holding a shotgun, and was not looking very friendly anymore. "Smoke that shit right now," he said, and held up the gun. I nearly shit my pants. In a fair fight, I knew I could take both of them in the shape they were. But when I saw that Rick had a knife as well, I knew this was bad. "You're going to smoke that, give me the keys to your car, and give me your fucking wallet," said Chris. I had zero options. My car was behind me, and my mind was spinning. They kept walking slowly towards me, Rick still holding out the pipe thing. "Talk your way out of this," I kept saying to myself. "Just stall." They were both within striking distance, and I said, "Look, guys, you can have my wallet and I'll leave, but I can't share your stuff with you." Chris just laughed and said, "You're going to smoke it now, basketball boy." Rick handed the pipe to me and stood with the knife at the ready. They were both laughing this crazy laugh, and I said, "Guys, I don't know how to do this." Chris reached into his pocket, and at that moment, I have no idea why I did what I did. I spun as hard as I could and smashed this glass pipe against his forehead, part of it getting into his left eye. He screamed, and blood started coming out of his eye, and Rick just stood there. Chris let the shotgun drop, and again, out of nowhere, I thought to kick it as far away as I could. He just kept yelling. Rick was looking at him saying, "Dude, you okay, dude? You okay?" I took that chance, ran to my Volvo, jumped in, started it up. The last thing I saw was the two of them in the headlights as I slammed it in reverse, turned it around on the grass, and I heard a thud on the back window. They had thrown something at me. I got back to the main road as quick as I could, and I looked at my hand. It was bleeding really bad. So I grabbed a hat I had on the front seat and wrapped it around it. We didn't have a hospital in town, but there was a sheriff's outpost, so I flew up there and ran up to the door. Thankfully, a sheriff was in. I quickly told him what had happened, and he said he'd call EMS to look at my hand, and was worried about whatever was in the pipe getting into my body. He made a call to the other sheriffs, and a bunch of them went out to Chris's place while I got looked at. They found them both completely strung out on meth, and Chris had a ruptured eyeball. He kept saying my name, and that I attacked him, and he wanted me arrested. Yeah, right. At the end of this, both did get arrested for all kinds of drug stuff. I didn't bother pressing any charges, as they really didn't do anything to me other than threaten me. They were already in enough trouble as it was, the way I saw it. Anyway, that night I got bandaged up, and the sheriffs told me to go have a doctor take a look at it the next day, and I just went home, still shaken up and scared out of my mind. Chelsea and my mom freaked out when they saw the blood on my sleeve and on my hand. I told them the whole story, and then grabbed a stiff scotch to calm down. Long story short, both of those guys went to jail, and a bunch of stuff that they had squeaked out from their last brush with the law was revoked, and stiff prison time came their way. I put it all behind me and enjoyed the holidays before going back home and going to work. I kind of put it out of my mind until this past summer. I got a Facebook friend request from Chris. He sent me a message that said, "Steve Nash was a great player. How are you?" I deleted it. Chelsea and I have 3 kids now and live in Tampa, and my parents just moved to Naples. I haven't been back home since, and I don't ever plan on it. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you would like to hear narrated on my channel, email it to unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. And while I'm at it, if you have a true scary Halloween story, send it now. I'm hoping that this will be the biggest and best Halloween fest that I've ever had, but I need your help. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell for every time I upload, and follow me on social media. All the links to that are in the description below. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, remember, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.